Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good this morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Let's go ahead and get started. Jump right into this.
Awesome.
All right. Let me share my screen with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this morning is our first day of kind of going over the testing strategies. Okay.
Okay.
How do you actually approach the test? So let me pull up. All right. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Perfect. All right. So tell me first of all, your studying approach. How do you study?
Um, so so lately, well, I have my little schedule that I you've seen.
Okay.
Let me see why my camera isn't able to log me, or my camera isn't.
No, that's okay. You don't need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But thank you. But so my study strategy, I try to stick to my schedule, but lately
Mhm.
um I study whenever I'm able to.
Okay.
So like lately I've been staying up later than like what I should be staying up.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so if I'm like last night for example, so like I couldn't sleep, so I got up and I did a Cars passage at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
In the morning?
Yes.
Okay, we're going that's a whole different topic we need to talk about. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's not in that terms. That is something else that needs to be discussed.
Okay.
that that's going to take for a whole other session.
Okay. Yes,
So
sir.
let's do this. Let me just go through how you should be studying or how you the approach, okay?
Yes, sir.
So whenever you study, I always say the best thing to do is become a detective. Okay.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is before you study anything, ask questions.
Mhm.
And do you know what that means?
Mhm. Yes,
What
sir.
does that mean? What does that mean?
So, ask questions about like with the passage. What is the main idea?
No, 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 no. This is
Oh.
not even questions. This is we're talking about studying. How
Oh.
to prepare to study. So whenever you're studying the material, so whenever you study the material, when we say become a detective, ask questions, we mean this is a better way to help retain information. Okay.
Mm,
And so what we do is typically, let me give you an example. Let's just say we are talking about, I don't know, example would be amino acids. Okay.
mhm.
So whenever you get to the topic of amino acids, before you read anything on amino acids, ask a bunch of questions. Write down a bunch of questions you want the answer to. Give an example. You may want to know what are the structures, right?
Mhm.
All right, so you write that down. What are the structures of the amino acids? You may want to know um, how are amino acids different, right?
Right.
You may want to know hydrophobic versus hydrophilic, right?
Yes, sir.
So you see, you ask you as many questions as you can think of, write them down. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I know in this day and age of computers and everything, people don't write, but there's an art to writing. Writing helps imprint things on the mind, on the brain.
Mhm.
So I would say write those, have a notebook or whatever, and just write the questions down. Now, guess what? When you get ready to start studying, what's going to happen is you're going to start to find the answers to your questions.
Mhm.
And what that does, it triggers something we call emotional retention.
Mm.
All right. So this emotional retention method is something I probably developed this about maybe 20 years ago. And what it is basically this. We tend to remember things that we have an emotional connection to, whether it was a great professor who we really liked. If you really have thought about a professor that really had an impact, You could probably remember a class you were sitting in, when that professor was teaching, what they were teaching, even probably what they were wearing,
Mm-hmm.
because of the emotional connection to it.
Right.
Now, emotion can be both positive or negative. It
Right.
doesn't matter whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, it still causes a retention to happen. Okay. So whenever you study, you are trying to trigger this emotional retention.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a couple ways. So the first way, so now we're going to talk about how do you trigger this emotional retention? How do you become excited about a subject that you may not want to study, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So let's go through that. Okay. So here we go. It's called the triggers. And I'm going to just put ER for emotional retention. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is the one that I just gave you. Is ask questions.
Yes, sir.
And the reason you ask questions is because when you find that answer, you get excited. The brain gets excited because you're like, oh, cool, that's what I was looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
That helps to keep that information, right?
Right.
The second thing is to create an environment that increases ER. Now, let me tell you about. So, and this is gonna sound super crazy. So people say, you need to be in a nice, quiet environment. It
Right.
could be true. Some people study well in those situations, but you have to know your triggers, your emotional triggers. Okay,
Mhm.
things that trigger, and that's why I always say this is one of those unique parts of the ER method, is because I've seen people who can study in chaos. I mean, literally chaos, and it triggers emotional retention for them. I have
Mm.
other people who can't, they have to have complete quiet. Now, I will tell you this, whatever you do, you want to create the emotional environment first. All right.
Wow.
So don't just randomly go to studying without a plan.
Right.
So I'll give you an example for me. So one of the things that I would do, and I've seen people do this, like just say you have a something that's close to you, like a pet,
Of
right?
course. Right. Mm-hmm.
So you have a pet, and right before you start to study, you go get fired up with your pet. You go play with the pet, you go running around, whatever you're doing with your pet, right?
Okay.
And then you go to study.
Yeah.
So what you've just done is you created an emotional environment before you study.
Right.
And so now what that does is it helps you to retain information because you are connecting that emotional event with studying.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's a positive, something that you created positive.
Right.
Now, let me just tell you, again, like I told you, ER doesn't care what the emotion is. All ER knows is there's an emotion and it's something I'm gonna remember by it.
Right.
So believe it or not, you can create a negative emotion. And now, don't do it.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't recommend it. But
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a real life example.
Yes, sir.
I had a student and she would remember more information after arguing with her boyfriend.
Oh my God.
She would. She would. She could have this heated argument, right?
Uh-huh.
And you would think, oh, she ain't gonna be able to focus. She's not gonna remember anything. And she could have this heated argument, and then like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. And then she goes study, right?
Okay.
And would retain much more information than when she was just in a quiet environment. And I thought to myself, wow, that's an interesting concept because the ER doesn't care what type of emotion it is, because
Mhm.
it's going to just link it to that event.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
what I say about creating an environment, you have to find out what are your, and I would say your positive emotional triggers.
Right, because that sounds healthy.
It is healthy. Now
Right.
I will say this: the young lady I'm talking about in question, she's already finished med school and residency,
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
and
that's good.
Yeah, but that worked for her. But I always say, you're right, create a healthy environment.
Right.
So
Right.
find some positive triggers, things that, kind of get you already uh, amped up before you start.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So ask questions before you do any topics, create the environment. Okay. So now you created the environment. You're studying because you've already asked the questions.
Hmm.
Now here's the other part.
Interesting.
How do you create? What do you do now that you're studying to maintain that emotion, right?
Oh,
Because
okay.
you got the emotion going in. And
Hmm.
that's gonna really that's gonna, for the most part, depending on how strong that emotion is,
Mm.
it could carry through an entire session, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
But here's the thing. So whenever you study, we say that there is a uh almost like an expiration on
Mhm.
that initial emotion.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
so your study uh should be in what I call blocks.
Okay. Right,
So,
right,
so you
right.
don't just study. So let's say you've gotten your emotional trigger. You've already asked your questions. Now the asking of the questions will carry you a long way because you're going to always be looking for your answers.
Right,
So
right.
that's going to help you. But
Yeah.
then the other thing that helps is when you study in blocks. Now, when I say study in blocks, what I mean by that is um, what you do is you get a stopwatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get this stopwatch, and as soon as you've done your emotional trigger, you start studying, right?
Okay.
The moment, the very moment you feel like you're drifting off, you're fatigued a little bit, the mind is wandering, stop the
Hmm.
watch. Stop it. I
Okay.
don't care if it's 5 minutes, I don't care if it's 55 minutes, but stop it. Okay. When you stop it, that is your checkpoint.
Okay.
Okay. That now becomes your checkpoint for the entire day. Your
Wow.
checkpoint changes it could change every day or it could stay the same. So now let's say your checkpoint is 30 minutes, right?
Right.
So now what you'll do is for every study block you have is only 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you feel like I'm at 30 minutes and I can go more, don't. Not on that day, not that particular day. You
Okay.
stop at 30 minutes. Now you may have 7 or 8 30-minute blocks.
Right.
But again, it's kind of up to you and the fatigue thing. Now, what do? Each block is like a new emotional trigger start.
Oh,
So
interesting.
when you take your break, you go do whatever you do to get your emotional trigger going. But
Okay.
it's a positive relaxation. You may go play with the pet again.
Okay.
You
Okay.
may do something that's just like, all right, cool. And
Right.
so whatever that is, okay. So
Interesting.
that's what you do, and that carries you through the entire day.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Oh, wow. So, I mean, so I guess so. It's like you're allowing yourself to, you're not like forcing yourself to, like,
That's right.
if you're not feeling it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because that happens so much. Like I don't feel like, but like if I don't feel like studying, but I
Yeah.
force myself to study anyway. You know.
Right. And you're wasting time
Okay.
because
Right.
you're not going to it's going to be super hard to retain the information.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
create. So that's why you set your checkpoint from the start.
Hmm.
So whenever you set that check, I've had people whose checkpoint has been 15 minutes. And they would just literally every 15 minutes they'd be taking a break and they'd be recharging.
Hmm.
I have people whose checkpoints are an hour and a half. It just kind of depends on you. But you'll get good at knowing, okay, I'm starting to feel myself zoning out.
Hmm.
As soon as that happens, that's your checkpoint. You stop that watch, and then once you set your checkpoint for that day, you don't have to recheck. You don't have to set it again.
Right.
But every day you create a new checkpoint at the beginning of your studies.
Okay.
All right. So now look at this. So now you've created the environment, you've asked the questions.
Hmm.
Now you're in your check, you have your checkpoint set, right?
Right.
This gets you through the study period, right? Now it is your post ER. Okay. This is after you study. Okay.
Okay.
It doesn't change. You still have to have some type of emotional trigger that now the last thing that you connect your studying with has to be your emotional trigger. Now, I always recommend making it some emotional trigger that's not one that you've been using all throughout your checkpoints.
Okay.
So again, this is something that's going to be unique to you, and you'll have to kind of figure that out. But you create something that, I've seen people do anything from food triggers. I've seen anybody do something with, like this one. Like I said, people use everything.
Mm.
I had this one. After she would study, right? She would have this ritual where she would basically go put on this certain, like these clothes she liked or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And every time she would do that, she would go to the mirror, she'd put on those clothes, and then she would just start without any notes or anything. She would just stand in the mirror and just start reciting everything she could,
Okay.
just blurting it out in front
Yeah.
of the mirror in these clothes. Then she'd shut her day down. Now that's what she did.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it is really, huh?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So it's really like whatever's gonna trigger you emotionally. For her, so each day, so she could wake up the next day and remember what she was wearing in that mirror that day. It's like, oh yeah, I remember the amino acids,
Oh, yeah.
this. So she had like a visual of it.
Okay. Oh, that is so cool. Okay.
So this right here is what I'm describing to you is how you should. This is how you should approach studying. Okay.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Wow. 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 Wow.
Yep. So I've always said that I was gonna put this in a book, but I always give it to my, the students who are in my group, and that's helped
Mhm.
them do well on their
That is,
studying
yeah.
classes and the MCAT or USMLEs. But I said, I'm gonna put this at some point. I've already written it up and everything. I just haven't, published it.
Publish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so you have this, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
That's
So
cool. Thank you so much.
yeah, okay. So now you know how to study, right?
Right.
Oh, the other thing I was going to tell you too, you remember I was talking about the art of writing, right?
Yes. The writing helps you
No,
remember.
it helps you remember. Now, that's the fun thing. And you kind of use this throughout, but note cards, don't run away from them. Some
Oh,
people don't like using them.
yeah. I have note cards. I have
Good.
some note cards.
You use the note cards. Now, let me just tell you this. All your note cards, every note card should be a mnemonic some kind of way.
Okay.
Don't ever create a note card that's just a plain note card. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Let's say you got a note card, and I'm gonna put front and back right here. You can see what I'm writing, right?
Right. Yes, sir.
So here's this. So on the front of my note card, I might have hydrophobic amino acids, right?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's on the front of my note card. So then on the back, I'm like, okay, let's just say I listed the amino acids. Like, let's just say I put down leucine, isoleucine,
Mm-hmm.
valine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
well, just say I listed those out, right?
Right. Right. Alanine. Da 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 da. Yep.
Phenylalanine, right? Stuff
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Now, if you do a note card like that, that's not really beneficial.
Mm-mm.
It's not going to help. But if I told you, let's be on the back of the card, if I told you that, let's say, like say you got your hair done, right?
Right.
When women get their hair done, they don't want to get their hair wet, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
that means that they would kind of be hydrophobic, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And so if you think about it, okay, let's just say females names, right?
Oh, okay.
For the most part. So if you think of
Oh,
like Lucy, her
yeah.
cousin Lucy, Val, right? Elena.
Okay.
I call her Fifi.
Fifi. Okay.
Right. And then, so you think of I'm just saying you create a mnemonic, right? Whatever your mnemonic is. This is one I just use for hydrophobic amino acids, right?
Yeah, right.
Fifi. And then I'll say like women sometimes can be a trip.
Tryptophan.
Tryptophan, so this was a way that I could remember when I was in medical school my hydrophobic amino acids, right? And so on my front of my card, I would have that. On the back, I'm like, okay, the female names. And so as soon as I saw the female names, that would give me my trigger. That would again, a mnemonic is an emotional connection.
Right.
Because it's something like you're like, oh yeah, cool. I laugh at it, it's funny, or whatever. So then as soon as I'm like, okay, if I know all of my hydrophobic, I don't have to memorize hydrophilic.
Oh.
Because it's not hydrophobic. So yeah, so whenever you study, and that's going to take us to the next part. Do you understand all that?
Right. So it's like you make it meaningful.
Exactly. It's an emotion. Again, it's something that you can have an emotional connection to. That's why I've had people say, Dr. Sutton, I looked at all those mnemonics. I said, but did you create the mnemonic?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and I said, if you could see somebody else mnemonic, and if it's really funny to you, you'll remember it.
Right.
But if it's just a mnemonic, that's not a trigger. The best triggers are the mnemonics that you create.
Right.
Because you like, oh, I remember that. I remember, this reminded me of that car I used to have or something. Okay. Nobody else may know the mnemonic, but you can remember it.
Okay, right.
Okay, got that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So now you understand basically how to use the emotional retention. Mm-hmm. You understand now how to create the note cards based on the emotional retention.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the next part of that is that now you got to say, okay, I'm studying well, I'm retaining the information, and now you got to do practice questions, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
So practice questions are also time for studying. Okay. A lot of times people think they're doing practice just to see what they know. It's not that. Your practice questions are actually your content review. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's how you use the practice questions that benefits you the most. Mm-hmm.